Okay, well, let's start off with a review of algebra before we get into the main course. This is stuff that you should have seen in an earlier class, and even if you have, this will be good for us to review. Let's start off with the real number line. The real number line looks, something like this, and we can put the nice whole numbers, integers here by every notch. I'll put the 0 right here, and then to the right I'll go positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, and so on. And then to the left we'll go with negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. The number line represents every single real number. It's not just these that we labeled. For example, 1/2 would be right about there, 1.5 would be about there, and where would pi be? Pi is about 3.14159. It'd be just a little bit to the right of 3 right there. Okay, so if a is a number and it's less than 0, then where is a on the number line? Well, first, if it's less than 0, let's define it to be a negative number. And if a is a negative number, then where is it on the number line? Negative numbers are to the left of 0 on the number line. Like this. Everything to the left of 0 is negative, even if it's right about there. And then if a is greater than 0, then a is a positive number. And positive numbers are to the right of 0 on the number line. All right, and if a is any real number, then a times 0 is equal to 0 times a. And what is it equal to? It's equal to 0. 0 times anything gives you 0. And now let's say that a and b are real numbers and they're not equal to 0. How do we know if a times b is bigger than 0? Because a and b could be either positive or negative. So AB is greater than 0 if what? If, well, one way of saying it would be A and B have the same sign. So they're both positive. Maybe I'll put that in parentheses. Both positive or both negative. And then it's less than 0, the product A times B, if one of them is positive and one of them is negative. So one way of saying that is exactly one of A and B is negative. Or I could have said exactly one of them is positive. Or I could have said one of them is negative and one of them is positive. Or I could have said A is negative and B is positive, or A is positive and B is negative. They all mean exactly the same thing. Because I said exactly one being negative means that the other one has to be positive. Okay, you probably remember absolute value. It's denoted by this, where you put vertical bars on either side of the number. So the absolute value of A is a variable that represents a number, is denoted like this. And it's defined to be what? What is the absolute value of A? If A is greater than or equal to 0, how could I simplify that? Well, if it's greater than or equal to 0, it's just equal to A. An example, if A is 10, that's greater than or equal to 0, of course. The absolute value of A is 10, because A is 10. And what about if A is less than 0? What is the absolute value of A? Well, you may not like this, but it's actually negative A. And don't say, well, it can't be negative because it's an absolute value. Well, you can say that, but negative A is not a negative number because A by itself is negative. So put a negative sign in front of a negative number and you get a positive. number. For example, a is a negative number here. So a is going to be equal to, I'll first write it like this. Negative 4 is a, and then you put a negative sign in front of it, then that's equal to positive 4. Basically, for a real number, if you're taking the absolute value, you can just take away a negative sign if there is a negative sign. All right, number 5. You may not have seen this before, but the distance between two numbers on the number line. You may not have seen it written like this before. It just means D, the distance between A and B, or the distance between A and between B and A. And hopefully you realize that the distance between A and B is the same as the distance from B and A. We think of it as just being a positive number. Okay, we don't think of it as which direction are you traveling from getting from A to B or from B to A. Just measure the distance on the number line. And it's defined to be what? One way of doing it is simply the absolute value of A minus B. That will give you the distance between them. It's like the positive difference between them. And another way of saying is that you could switch these around. Absolute value of B minus A. So that tells us that the absolute value of A minus B is equal to the absolute value of B minus A. Absolute value of A minus B is equal to the absolute value of B minus A. And let's do an example. Let's say A is negative 2 and B is 4. What is A minus B? Well, it would be A, negative 2, minus B, which is 4. And that's equal to the absolute value of negative 6, which is 6. And let's do it the other direction. Okay, what is absolute value B minus A equal to? Well, that would be the absolute value of B, which is 4, minus A, which is a negative 2. 4 minus negative 2 is equal to 4 plus 2, which is absolute value of 6, which is 6. So when you take the difference, it doesn't work if it's a plus sign here. But if you take the difference of two numbers, it doesn't matter if you go A minus B or B minus A when they have absolute values around them. Okay, well, let's start with a little review now of exponents. You probably remember what exponents are. We'll take n as a positive integer, like 1, 2, 3, 4, dot, dot, dot. And a is just some real number on the number line, not equal to 0. Okay. What is a to the nth power? It simply means you take n copies of a and multiply them all together. So the way I'm going to write it is a times a times a times dot, 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 an ellipse to the final a. And I'm going to make a note that there are n of them. I'll say n times. Or I could have said n copies of a. All right, because you have to count them because it's a to the nth power. So there have to be n a's here, all getting multiplied together. All right, then some basic exponent rules. What is a to the 1 power? How could we simplify that? Well, that's just one copy of a, which is really not being multiplied by anything, so it's just a. And a to the 0 does not matter what a is. A is any positive or negative real number. A to the 0 is not 0, but 1. Just memorize that. And then what is a to the negative n? Well, that is equal to 1 over a to the positive n. The negative sign means take the reciprocal of the base. The reciprocal of a is 1 over a. So we can write this, and we'll get to this in the next video. We can write this like 1 to the n over a to the n. That's just a rule of exponents. You have a fraction raised to an exponent. You can raise the numerator and the denominator both to that exponent. And that simplifies to simply 1 over a to the n power. So a to the negative n is equal to 1 over a to the positive n.